Hey guys, so while most people are playing fire version of Elemental Hit, which has insane damage and most likely gonna get nerfed next league, I wanted to try using all elements, using Elemental Equilibrium, and I wanted to see if it would be endgame viable. And I did not pity my currency to make this build. So this build is pretty expensive, it has a lot of shenanigans to increase the damage, but to start it all you need is Piscator's Wand, which unfortunately is level 65, and there aren't any good leveling wands for Elemental Hit build, so I just used 2 Poet's Pen to level up, which is kind of expensive, and that is why this build is not really suited for newer players, or should I say this is not a good for the league start. But you know what, I think this build is way more interesting than the fire version of Elemental Hit, because you need to actually think how you're gonna build it and think how you're gonna gain damage and how you're gonna get defensive layers. While with fire Elemental Hit all you need is Call of the Brotherhood Ring, Avatar of Fire and Call to Fire support gem and you're good to go. So how does this build feel like and what can it do? Damage wise on a 6-link I can reach over 600,000 Shaper DPS, which is plenty to do the Shaper. And I did attempt Shaper, however there is a problem with this build. It's not the damage but it is survivability. For mapping even up to tier 16 maps it's pretty comfortable and pretty relaxing, but when it comes to bossing it's definitely not the best one. I think I would even sacrifice some damage to get more life or more defensive layers somehow, but if you're only gonna use it for map clear, it does have pretty good clear speed, it does have pretty good movement speed, and the damage is pretty good. It has multiple defensive layers, and you don't need to worry about being efficient with your flasks, because this is Scion Pathfinder, and you don't need to invest as much as I did. So let's take a closer look at this build, and I'm gonna start with my items and skills and then passive skill tree. So starting with my items, and as you're about to see I have quite a lot of corrupted items, and I'm gonna explain why. But let's start off from the weapon, Piscator's Wand, which gives basically a lot of elemental damage and elemental damage penetration. It has no physical damage and it has pretty good critical strike chance. So I decided to go a crit route. And for that basically you always want Lycosidai shield. Overall Lycosidai just gives so much DPS because you never miss, and being Wander is difficult to get enough accuracy. There is no other weapon or shield which would give as much damage as Lycosidai. And I did corrupt my Lycosidai shield as well. The corruption mod doesn't really matter, I just wanted corrupted item. And I got this 6% physical damage from hits taken as lightning damage. Not sure if that's good or not, but oh well. By the way, Piscator's Wand is also corrupted. Now, I wanted corrupted items because of Shadow Stitch body armor, which always comes as a 6-link corrupted with 2 implicits. And you do get it by corrupting Sacrificial Garb in tier 3 corruption room. But like I said, you do get random implicits and your colors cannot be changed normally. So this armor was a cheaper option to get +2 6-link body armor. And it gives percentage life on kill, which is very pleasant while mapping. It's like being a trickster, except I'm not a trickster. It also gives all attributes which are kind of needed, and also 6% increase maximum life for each equipped corrupt item. So to increase my life pool I tried to corrupt as many items as I could. It does have a negative effect because with each corrupted item you lose all resistances. And here's the important part I totally overlooked when I planned this build. It also reduces your haste resistance. And this league is full of haste damage. And currently I have minus 96% haste resistance, but I have a counter for that. I'm gonna talk a bit later. Inside Shadow Stitch armor I have Elemental Hit setup, which is linked with elemental damage with attacks, which is the biggest damage multiplier, then power charge on crit to maintain your power charges, then faster attacks, increased critical damage, and greater multiple projectiles, which I swap for point blank against single target. And this is actually not the highest damage setup, it's just simply so difficult to get the right colors on +2 Shadow Stitch. Otherwise I would be using Hypothermia instead of critical strike damage or instead of faster attacks, but without faster attacks it doesn't feel good enough, and Hypothermia is a bit more conditional than faster attacks. Now if you look back at Elemental Hit, it now has 10% more damage per elemental ailment on the enemy. And you know what other item has that? Yoke of Suffering Amulet, which is also by the way corrupted. What it has is enemies take 5% increased damage for each type of ailment you have inflicted on them. So because this is Elementalist, I can guarantee shocks. So I am shocking, I am igniting, then I'm chilling because I have Cold Snap to guarantee chills against even bigger bosses. And I can also freeze enemies. Well, not the bosses, but I can still freeze them for additional ailment. But this also means that you need to attack at least 2 times to get the maximum damage. Next, my helmet. I did get this one basically just to have corrupted, and increased effect of shock is also very powerful. Unfortunately not as powerful as on pure Elementalist. But Star Conjure is just overall very nice. You do get increased attack speed, you do get a lot of flat life, and you also get some critical strike chance. Next I have 2 Sucker Thumb Fist, which is also corrupted. Even 1 Sucker Thumb Fist can be good enough. I'm basically using it with the Murderous Eye Jewel to get intimidate enemies, and intimidated enemies take 10% increased attack damage. And enemies take increased damage is the big damage multiplier. It's not the same as increased damage for you. It's almost the same as 10% more damage. And inside my Tomb Fist I have pretty decent life rolled jewel, which also gives blind and fire damage to when I roll fire hits. And the second jewel is pretty lame, you just have some life and attack speed. Next belt, Stygian wise with some elemental damage for attacks. Not the best rolled one, it could be better, but I can also equip another Abyss Jewel, which gives a lot of flat life, and crit multiplier if I have killed recently, which doesn't really work against big bosses. And I did craft these jewels myself, I just wanted a lot of life, and you could definitely get more damage on jewels. But jewels can also be very expensive, and I did not want my jewels to be more than 50% of the overall build cost. Next, boots probably could be better, but I just had them from long ago, and I keep using them. They do have some resistances, lots of movement speed, a chance to dodge attacks on hit, which is pretty nice, and some life. Well, leech can also be nice, but it doesn't really work against big bosses. Next, one of my ring is pretty nice. It doesn't have a lot of life, but it has resistances, some mana regen, and elemental damage with attacks. And another ring is just some random opal ring with life, some resistance. The timing unique ring would definitely be the best for damage, but like you can see, I don't really have a lot of life. You know, the more I look at my items, the more I think that I shouldn't use Shadow Stitch and use like a very high life rolled body armor, even if it wasn't +2. Maybe even change the amulet and use rare amulet with a lot of life and elemental damage with attacks, maybe as well with crit multiplier. It would definitely not be as good for damage, but it would give me more life. Also, basically I have to use Purity of Elements, because remember, Shadow Stitch reduces my resistances a lot. In my current setup I lose 36 all resistances including Chaos. And also basically I have to use Watcher's Eye, which gives a lot of Chaos resistance while affected by Purity of Elements, which I could definitely replace if I didn't use Shadow Stitch and use something like maybe Anger and use Anger as Watcher's Eye to get crit multiplier. But then again, Anger alone would only benefit fire hits. I'm just throwing ideas because there are definitely many ways to approach this build. I just really didn't want to spend more time on this build because I really want to do another build. As you know, I don't like sticking to one build for too long, but I may still give this build another try, because leveling was definitely a blast with this build, and the damage was really respectable. It's just I think that I approached the defensive layers in a bit too complex way. Talking about defensive layers, I am using Blasphemy with Enfeeble, and also like I said, I am using Purity of Elements. And I do have blind on hit on one of my jewels. And I am also using Quartz Flask for increased dodge. Also I have the usual cast when damage taken with Immortal Call and Frost Wall. Another cast when damage taken to trigger Blood Rage, because I usually forget to use Blood Rage manually. And then I have Decoy Totem, which seems like a cheat, but I can't really find good use of it anymore. It did help quite a lot against bosses like Zaro, but other than that it's not really that required to have Decoy Totem. Next I also have Val Cold Snap linked with Curse on Hit, Elemental Weakness and Increased Duration. Normal Cold Snap lasts 8.2 seconds, so basically you drop it on the big boss and you have 8 seconds of guaranteed chill, especially useful if you are using Hypothermia. And Val Cold Snap is, well, I tried to generate frenzy charges against big bosses because you get 1 frenzy charge per second if you are standing next to a boss, but I can't really see myself using it very much. When a lot of stuff is happening all around around you, I don't really have time to use Cold Snap just to generate frenzy charges. Instead, you may want to use Haste for more attack speed, or maybe Grace for defensive layer. But the normal Cold Snap is definitely needed, and especially nice to link it with Curse on Hit Elemental Weakness. So basically one click does two things, which is always good. Now for the passive skill tree, this is Scion, Pathfinder, Elementalist. Elementalist because elemental penetration and guaranteed shocks, and Pathfinder because of life sustain, also elemental penetration and more movement speed and attack speed, so all around good. Inquisitor may give you more damage instead of Pathfinder, but I find Pathfinder to be more quality of life improvement. And for the rest of the passive skill tree, I first started going left towards the upper one nodes, then to the right to more life to more one nodes, then towards the shadow area, grabbing all the good stuff, getting all the life wheel near the Scion, and also as you can see I am connecting to the Templar area, to the shadow area, and I have 1 point from the Ranger starting area. And that is because I am using Pure Talent, and from Pure Talent Scion gives 25 all attributes, Shadow gives 0.5% crit chance, base crit chance which gets killed by all the other crit multipliers. Ranger gives 7% movement speed, and Templar gives another 5% penetration. Also, another important unique jewel is Poacher's Aim, which gives some projectile damage, and projectile spears an additional target, which improves the clear speed quite a lot. I also did get corrupted this one with 7% increased effect of non-damaging ailments on enemies, which by the way is basically for the shock. As for the rest of the passive skill tree, you can check in video description, I will include the link, along with path for building import code. Now talking about path for building, there are still a couple of things that I need to note. In the configuration tab, as you can see, this damage is against Shaper and Guardians. I did not select that the enemy is shocked. This is because path for building does not properly automatically calculate your shock effectiveness. It always uses the maximum value, which is almost never. And to simulate proper damage from all the elements, I just select enemies are also frozen. This is just to give an extra element for calculation. And to get proper shock damage, I did modify a flask. And when I shock, enemies take 13.4% increased damage, but I rounded down to 13%. And that's about all. You would not believe how difficult for me was to speak today. For some reason my head is just not working. So I apologize if the audio was kind of awkward. I had to stitch quite a lot of sentences into one. But there's still one more thing. Someone mentioned that I'm not really doing self-promo in my videos, so this is just to let you know that I'm streaming every day, starting at around 9 AM London time zone, and as people say, they usually tune into my streams because it's good background noise while working or while studying or while playing the game, of course. So yeah, I'll leave a link in video description as always. And I also got Patreon if you feel like supporting this memester financially. And that's gonna be all. My next build is most likely gonna be Cold Snap Indigon build, which I'm already making. So thank you for watching and see you soon.